If you want to create the outline for your course by the end of today, use the course outline builder. Imagine for a second that there was a process that could help you simply to download all the ideas out of your head and organize them into a process that could turn into a course and do all that in just one sitting. Well, you can do that now with the course outline builder. Now, most people that try to create a course, they struggle in three main ways. First, they struggle with the curse of knowledge. They simply can't see what they already know, and they overlook all of the steps. And this process can help you to see those. You end up overcomplicating things, and I suffer from this the most. When you walk through the course outline builder, what this will help you do is break down all the steps that you know already, or that you're going to learn about, or that you're going to put together into your course. It helps you to organize things in a way that makes things more streamlined and less complicated. Or you may struggle with some imposter syndrome. So a lot of course creators, or a lot of people that want to create a course, they might say, who am I to teach? Or I don't have enough knowledge, or my processes aren't really that unique. Well, by going through the course outline builder, you'll end up seeing that you know a lot more than you realize sometimes. And it doesn't have to be so complicated for you to create the outline for your course. So here are the course outline goals. Goal number one, we want to make this process as easy as possible. And so you have this at this video. There is a Notion file for you to use. There's also a Miro board for you to use. And the instructions should be, we've designed them to make them as easy as possible. Second, the goal is for you to create your course outline by today. If you've been thinking about, should I create a course? What should I create a course about? How should I structure this course? By the end of today, you should have your course outline done by following this process. And you're going to use this PMA method to organize your ideas about your course into a structure that works. So here are the steps. First off, you're going to pick a tool, whichever one you prefer to use. And so here on the screen, I have Notion. So if you prefer to use Notion, you're going to use Notion. If you want to use the Miro board, there's a Miro board, which I'm going to walk you through. Or if you want to just use a LegoPad, the first course that I ever created was on a LegoPad, simply writing things down. That's totally fine. Pick a tool, stick with it, and run. The next thing that you're going to do is basically you're going to write down all the steps that somebody needs to do to get from A to Z. So after you picked the topic that you want to teach, we're simply going to map what are all the steps that someone has to complete to get from here to here. What are all those steps? That's the second part. And then the third part is simply to group these steps into phases and modules so that it creates the structure for your course. How to pick the right tool? I've added links here for you. You really just have to pick one. Pick the one that is most useful for you. If you like to use Notion, I have a link in here for you. For Miro, I have a link in here. And then there's other resources for you here. Mark Levy is awesome. I've spoken to him before. Super helpful guy. And he has this nice process, which he calls making lists of lists. This is something that can be helpful when you're doing your course outline, which is basically what we're going to do here. But it's also very useful for whenever you're trying to brainstorm an idea about anything, right? If you're stuck, if you know that you want to create a certain idea, if you want to get something out of your mind, creating lists of lists is a really cool thing. There's a link to his book, his website. And a cool side note is that Mark Levy is one of the guys that coached Simon Sinek. So the guy that wrote the book, Start With Why. There's a testimonial from Simon Sinek. So Mark Levy is really cool. Okay, so part one, the way you're going to do this, right? So how do you actually write down the steps? Well, it starts with setting a timer. If you don't set the timer, what will end up happening is you're going to dread over this and work on this for hours, for days, and it's never going to get done. You want to, limit the amount of time that you're going to give to this thing. And trust me, in 25 minutes, you can do a lot of work. You can do a lot of thinking. And in 25 minutes, you'll be able to download it. It'll give you enough focus, enough time for you to work in a way that allows you to download all of your ideas. And when you're going through it, try not to edit. You just want to write down all of the ideas in your head, all the steps that someone has to do to get from point A to B. right? So if your course, you're teaching somebody how to rank a blog post on Google's page one of search engine results, or how to build a tool shed, or how to make coffee, whatever it is, write down those steps, try not to edit them, work through the timer. And at the end of this process, it's likely that you're going to end up with 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. It depends on what you're teaching and what type of person you are. You can end up with dozens and dozens of steps. Don't be alarmed if that happens to you. Totally normal. Okay? That's how we're going to do that first part. The second part is you're going to review your steps and add any that you missed. So naturally what happens is when you're going through the process, your timer will go off and you'll take a breather, maybe go grab some water, maybe take a walk, and then you'll come back to it and you'll look at your process, you'll look at your steps, and you'll say, hey, wait a second, I forgot steps this and this, right? I forgot to add if it was the coffee, I forgot to get a mug. After getting a mug, I forgot to turn the water on, or after I turn the water, right? Whatever those steps that you forgot, by reviewing it, giving yourself some space, maybe you go away and you come back to the task later on, you'll be able to fill in those gaps and add any that you missed. You can also do some research. And so you can look at book chapters or comments on Amazon, unanswered questions on Quora about the work or the outcome that somebody's trying to get to. So for example, again, if we're using an example of your course, which is to create a mobile app, let's say, you might overlook what those intermediate steps are. And by going out onto the web and doing some quick research, you can go into Amazon.com, look for books on building mobile apps, and look at their chapters, for example. That's an easy way for you to identify, like, what are those major steps in there, and say, wait a sec, I forgot to add this step. Actually, this is part of my step as well. These are one of the things that I do as well. I recommend, or I want to teach in my course. I'm going to include that in one of my steps, right? And so that's what you want to do in terms of filling in the blanks of your course. And finally, get to a finalized first draft. Make sure that you work through it so you can finish a first draft version of this. Next is how to organize your notes into your course outline. And we're going to use this phases, modules, and actions framework. So the first thing that you want to do here is you're going to eliminate or combine things that are similar or that aren't 100% necessary. You see, when you're going through this, it's natural for you to put all the steps, and that's what you want to do. Once you get to this phase, you're going to start to combine certain things together. So if we're talking about, again, the mobile apps, developing mobile apps, you might have something where it's set up your environment, and then set up environment for iOS, and set up an environment for creating on Android. Well, maybe those three things are actually the same thing, and maybe they're just like one little detail. I don't know the process, but maybe there's only one little detail that means that you don't have to create an entire new module or entirely new step to teach that. You can group that and combine those three actions into just one. So that would be an example. Another thing to do is whatever isn't essential, you can remove it. One thing that I like to do here when it comes to the essential part is to take whatever you've added that is not essential and drag it somewhere or put it somewhere as a bonus. So we'll talk more about this as you work through the Course Creator Canvas, and whatever isn't essential for the core of your course can end up being used as a bonus, something that you add later to the process. Maybe it's something, for example, to get to point A to Z, right? To get to the transformation of your course, to get to that end result, you need to do these. But I've thought about all of these other things that you're going to be able to do once you finish the course, and I've put them in here as bonuses. So that's kind of a way, I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's a way that you can think about the non-essential stuff. So all this non-essential stuff, you're going to move it somewhere else. You don't have to throw it away, just move it somewhere else. Then you're going to group these steps into 3 phases, and I'm going to explain why we want to organize them into 3 phases, and then the 3 modules, and then the 3 actions. And the reason why is, like, our brain likes threes. Our brain likes things in threes because it's more memorable. It is sometimes it can rhyme. It allows us to sometimes visualize things easier. As soon as you add 4 steps or 5 steps, it can just become more complicated. And here are some examples, right? You've seen these if you're deciding between taking a course, you might say, okay, I want the beginner one, or actually maybe I'm intermediate or advanced. You're used to seeing things like from the lean canvas, build, measure, learn. From movies and theater, you'll see things act 1, act 2, act 3. If you're doing a presentation, intro, body, conclusion, the 3 laws of motion, 3 little pigs, you've seen these threes everywhere. And the reason why you see them everywhere is because it works. And so we want to use that structure to organize your course as well. And I'm going to show you this visual of how your course structure should be. Now, if you don't have a course that's this long, if you only have 2 phases, that's totally fine. At least what you don't want to end up with is saying, okay, I have a course and then I have a billion steps. When you have a course and you have a billion steps, it becomes really difficult for your student and for your customer to think about, like, where the heck do I start? This is way too much. This is too complex. How do I do this? And it also makes it super difficult for you to explain what you do to other people. And I'll give you an example of this. Let's say we have a course and we have steps 1 through 27. If you start to say, okay, first you do 1, then you do 2, then you do 3, then you do 4. Oh, and I have, step 30, 29, and 27. Oh, and then there's step 26, which you don't, and then 27 finally is the last step. That conversation is a lot more challenging to have with somebody versus having a conversation around, for example, just your phases. So if you end up with a mobile app creation idea again, we could break this down into, and you're going to get to this level, but let me just give you an example here. Let's say that your mobile app, the phases are: first, you're going to set up your environment, you're going to build the app, and then you deploy it. Maybe those are the only 3 phases that you need to tell somebody so that they get this into their head. It's like, okay, mobile app development really just boils down into 3 main steps. Okay, cool. Well, what are the steps inside those steps? Well, those are the modules, right? And so setting up your environment, or maybe it's not setting up your environment. Maybe it's something more like build a concept, or build your V1, build your V0, or build your MVP. That sounds more. Build your MVP. And so here you're going to validate an idea, then you're going to sketch it, and then you're going to have a very low level MVP is just using Post-it notes and screenshots and Figma or something graphical like that, so that you have an MVP so you can show somebody. Then the next phase is going to be to codify. So you're going to add some code. So the code, you're going to take your Figma drawings and then put them into this thing and that thing and this thing, and then you're going to connect it to a database, which will do this and this and this, and then build interactions so that it does this and this and this. And that's like the MVP step 2. And then the final MVP, which is actually publishing this thing, it's take your code base and do this, take your this and publish it there, and you end up at the end creating a mobile app. When you go through this process, it's a very natural way for you to organize your ideas. You'll feel, when I went through this, I felt relief, right? So thinking about all these different ideas, well, how do I structure them and how do I organize them? And as soon as you do this, you're going to feel so great, because you're going to say, like, man, all these ideas, look at all of these cool ideas that I have here on how I can help people. Right? And look at my process. It's so organized. You know what? This is something we're going to talk more in depth in the course Creator Canvas, but I see a lot of other people, a lot of experts out there talking about steps that are completely not necessary, steps that are outdated, steps that are slow, or steps that have become that are no longer relevant given whatever's happening in the market, whatever is going on right now. And so I've actually chosen to remove or ignore or overlook all of those things. And I want you to focus on this. Because when you focus on this process, on these 3 steps, or in this phase specifically, you set yourself up for success. And that really is an expression of your point of view, your thesis, the way you see the world. And we'll get more into depth into that later. So this is really what your aim is. This is the end result that you're looking to achieve, is to have this type of course structure as well. And I said that if you don't end up with 3 phases, that's totally fine. If you end up with 3 phases and you have 3 modules each, or maybe you only have 2 modules here or 4 modules here, again, that's also fine. It's just helps if you can structure and organize your ideas in a way that you follow this 3x3 format. So that was it. That was the course outline walkthrough. You now have a decision if you want to stay stuck, or if you want to use the course outline builder and the tools that are provided for you here, the Notion doc that's inside the Course Creator Canvas, or the Miro board that's also linked to in the Course Creator Canvas. You can use those to execute and go through this process to build your course outline today. I wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you in the next video.